Hello guys and welcome to the Los Blancos podcast. Today is a Camavinga special, but I just want to notify you, every international break that happens, we will not be doing a podcast. It will be a break unless there's some sort of big news that pops off in the world of Real Madrid. So, without further ado, let's get right into the podcast. Okay, for this special, we will be talking about Eduardo Camavinga. Now, we'll just give you a brief explanation on how the transfer happened. Obviously, there were many reports saying that the Mbappe transfer completely collapsed. Real Madrid gave up on Mbappe at that moment, and that's what caused us to chase after Camavinga and get the deal done really quickly. Now, we knew previously Rennes were looking to sell him this summer, as you know, obviously I've spoken about Ligue 1's financial problems. Rennes are one of the teams badly affected from it. But yeah, so that they and Camavinga only had 1 year left in the contract, so they were looking to shift him on for any type of money possible. You know, last summer we could have paid upwards of 80 million for him. This summer we've managed to steal him at 30 million. So it's a fantastic deal. Do you have anything else to say on like how the transfer happened?
Yeah, of course, like you said, the Mbappe deal completely collapsed. And Real Madrid had the money, and maybe they needed to sign someone to strengthen the squad. So they needed to sign someone, but maybe they didn't want it to overspend. So Camavinga was the perfect signing, and like you said, it's for less than half of the amount which he was previously linked to on last year. Of course, he didn't have the best of seasons on last year, but of course, he's still young and he's still talented. So, I mean, it's money well spent for me. I think it's 31 million and a few bonuses or add-ons in the future. So, that's a good amount of money for me for a quality young player.
Yeah, I think this transfer was actually done in a bit of revenge for PSG. Now, obviously, over the last few years, we've always realised that Florentino just had this utmost respect for Leonardo and Nasser Al-Khelaifi for some reason, and he refused to do something that would affect their relationship. When this transfer happened, obviously, Nasser Al-Khelaifi, kept on accusing Real Madrid of illegally contacting the player and all this stuff. So I think it was done in a bit of revenge because Camavinga was PSG's number one target, but they couldn't do it because of financial fair play. So what Real Madrid have done, in their viewpoint, they've just gone, okay, fine, you're not going to give us Mbappe. You can't sign Camavinga then. We'll just go in for Camavinga and then go in for Mbappe next summer. So I think it's kind of a bit of revenge on PSG. I still don't understand why we bid 200 million for Kylian Mbappe this summer, especially when we know we can get him for free next summer. But, now I don't understand why PSG rejected it, to be honest, because that type of money is just out of this world for a player who's only got 1 year left on his contract. PSG are not going to be able to renew his contract, but back to Camavinga, I mean, this is a fantastic move for him. He's spoken on how he's always wanted to come to Real Madrid, and I think, it's the type of move we needed at this moment in time. We needed a bit more midfield strength. Ceballos, Kroos, and Modric are all injured at this moment in time, and that leaves us with only a few options. As we'll speak on later, some of these players may be affected, but yeah, I think that's the reason why we did go in for him, rather than maybe. I don't think it was fully for playing reasons, but I think now if Mbappe or if some other player, some other player around wants to come in for PSG, I think that relationship between Perez and Al Khalifi it's boiled over now, and I think it's going to be tough to negotiate with PSG in the future.
Yeah, of course. Let me just expand on your point a little bit in relation to, of course, Mbappe. I think, of course, Madrid knew that PSG was going to reject it. I think if you look at one of the first interviews that Leonardo said when we made our first bid was that we're just making the bid because we know that PSG will reject the offer. And of course, and so we can go on to Mbappe and say, we tried to sign you at PSG, rejected the offer, So I think that Madrid knew that that PSG would say no. I saw that it was maybe 200 to 220 million that we bid for the player, and I think that's a lot of money, and of course, so of course, I saw that Josep Pedrerol, he also stated that Madrid, that Mbappe acknowledged the effort that Madrid put in for him, So I mean, maybe it was a plan, or it was something planned for Madrid. In relation to Camavinga, I think they actually maybe thought that they could have signed Mbappe this year, and they needed to strengthen the squad. And when Mbappe wasn't signed, Perez or Ancelotti maybe saying, you know what, we need to get in someone to strengthen the squad, because it's basically the same squad from last year, so that's hence basically Camavinga was signed, because no other player came through, like maybe except Alaba, but he's basically a replacement for Moussa Rafael. So Camavinga was signed, to strengthen the squad, in my opinion. Like you said, maybe it wasn't for football in terms, but Madrid had the money, so maybe they needed to sign someone, and it was always Mbappe or no one in terms of the attack. So they signed someone in midfield.
Yeah, I mean, I've thought that maybe we should have spent our money in the central of defence, because not only is there next summer, we don't have too many free options in the centre of defence. Next summer we could sign someone like Pogba, maybe Per Goretzka in central midfield. But I think most Madrid fans are happy with this transfer of Camavinga, and it's really easy to see why. His stats, despite Ren not having a great season last year, he was absolutely fantastic last year. I think. I mean, the previous season before that, 1920, he was just out of this world. He was ripping up league, and at age 16, his numbers did dip, but I wouldn't say he had a bad season. He was fantastic in the tackle. Previous season, 1920, I'm pretty sure he had something like 6 tackles per game, which is, it is literally out of this world. People like Casemiro don't have those type of numbers, and you think of Casemiro and you think of the proper, the tough tackle in the centre of midfield. Camavinga did more than Casemiro in that season. He only like 1.7 players dribbled past him last season, which is pretty good. If he's like that midfield enforcer, that's pretty good. If he carried the ball forward 50.28 times, that's quite impressive. If he's progressing the ball like that, we've previously spoke on how Renato Sanchez would be a good buy for Real Madrid. Camavinga is a younger, maybe not as good at carrying the ball, but that can definitely improve because he's so young still. He's got 89.4 pass completion rate. That's his passing's brilliant as well. He doesn't attempt many long balls, but he's the top player in Liga for his long ball pass completion, which is, if we want to go more direct and if we're chasing a game, that would be quite useful. And I think it speaks on how much of a box-to-box player he is. We've also got Fede in midfield, his stamina is just amazing, and his bravery and all of that is fantastic with Fede. I think Fede still has to go a little bit with technical ability, but I think physically and mentally Fede is brilliant, and I think Camavinga perfectly suits that because Camavinga's technically brilliant. So, what do you think on the Fede Camavinga partnership?
Yeah, of course. I was actually listening to Julian Loren stating that they are the perfect pair to complement each other in the future. One's right-footed, one's left-footed. They both have a lot of energy to contribute to the team. And also what I was thinking is that maybe if we had a player like Camavinga on last year against Chelsea, the midfield wouldn't be so dominated and overrun, in my opinion, because he brings so much of energy in terms of ball retention and ball progression. Like you said, he carries the ball well. He makes good passes, of course. For a young player, that's amazing in my opinion. And of course, he can also have a shot as well, as you can see in the goal he scored 2 days ago. For the French under 21 team. I think he's honestly a quality player in terms of what he can contribute. You said maybe as a replacement for Casemiro. I think for now, if it's a single pivot, I don't think that we should replace him with Casemiro. I think if we're playing with a double pivot, then maybe he can slot in alongside one of the midfielders. But in terms of where he plays, I think he should. If we're playing three in midfield, I think he should be one of the pair ahead of the defensive midfielder. Hence there were reports stating that Blanco won't be affected. That Carlo Ancelotti told Antonio Blanco that he wants to be affected by the signing because maybe he's planning to use Camavinga higher up the pitch, in my opinion. So I think Camavinga, I think he is so versatile in terms of where he can position himself, where he can start play, where he can, because I think that he played a few games on the wing last year, well, on wide midfield for his team, for them. So I think that would be a good signing. Of course, he's more like a replacement for Luka Modric, in my opinion, in terms of how he wins the ball, how he progresses the ball, how he passes, etc. This might sound a bit weird, but in my opinion, I think he's a mixture of maybe like Pogba and Modric and a little bit of Odegaard and Isco, because I think you can't really compare him to anyone because he just brings so much. He's fast as well. He's like, maybe you can say he has the body of a winger, and maybe a mixture of Pogba, in terms of the skill, and Modric in terms of the ball progression, and Odegaard in terms of when he has the ball on his left foot on the inside channels. So there's so many players you can compare him to, but not just one, because he has to bring so much to the team.
Yeah, you talked about Paul Pogba. Obviously, we're linked with him because his contract expires next summer. But I don't think he's like Pogba in that Pogba's like the beast in midfield. He's an absolute beast in midfield. He's got physical attributes where he can just run past the whole team, but he's also strong enough to just boss the midfield. I don't think Camavinga's that, because he's not as strong. He's not as maybe quick as Pogba, but I think with his technical attribute, we're talking about Paul Pogba. Pogba's probably one of the most talented players of our generation, and I think that's been mistaken because of all the controversies with Paul Pogba. But we can't get carried away with Camavinga. He has to still develop in many areas. I think he has to still go to the gym. He looks quite skinny still. I think he's not the. I think he should bulk out a little bit more. I think he should get a little bit quicker. But that's why Fede's would be such a good partner to him. With obviously we're going to talk about Blanco and what's going to happen to Blanco now. Blanco's obviously one of our most prized youth products. We can see Miguel and we can see other players like Blanco, Sergio Arribas. I think Blanco's he's different than the other midfielders in the central the other two young central midfielders in our team. In that Camavinga and Valverde, they're both. Camavinga's quite he loves to run. He can dribble past everyone. He can win back the ball as well. Fede, he's an absolute. He just has three lungs. That's what Fede's good at. And I think Blanco's just like the Busquets. I think Busquets is a nice comparison to make with Blanco because he's not like the extreme tough tackler. He's not strong. I don't think he's strong enough for that. But I think he's just a calm, composed player, and I think Blanco's the guy to replace Casemiro. I think he still has to improve tackling-wise if he wants to replace Casemiro, because... And also, I don't think we can replace Casemiro over the coming years, because when we talk about Casemiro, he's a unique player. He's a player that back in the 90s and the noughties, they would have made players like Casemiro, where he's just a tough tackler in the defensive midfield. They don't make players like that anymore because they tend to make players that are brilliant at passing and composed, like Joshua Kimmich for Bayern. Those type of players, the players that they make in CDM these days. Players in the mold of Sergio Busquets. Busquets has really molded this generation of players, but Casemiro is one of his kind because he's literally only a tough tackler and he can get some goals as well. That's what he's so good at, and that's why he's so valuable to us. So I think with Blanco, we're gonna have to develop a new way of playing. We can't rely on players like Casemiro to win us the ball back, and I think that's where Camavinga comes in. He's an extremely good tackler, and if we had that in the central midfield, a brilliant pressure, in the midfield, I think that can cover Blanco's maybe not enough of tackling for Blanco. But do you think we should switch to a different style of play and incorporate Antonio Blanco, or should we try and find another Casemiro?
No, of course, I'm so happy you mentioned that in terms of Casemiro and his playing style, because I was listening to another podcast, on I think 2 days ago, and they were speaking about Casemiro, the exact same thing that he said. There are not many players like Casemiro again, and of course in the 90s and the 80s and early 2000s, there are players like Makalele, and of course, who are similar to Casemiro in terms of what he contributes to the team. And of course, if you look at Casemiro, maybe you can say, of course, there's another player like Kante, but I think Kante isn't the same player like Casemiro. I think, of course, with Casemiro, you got a lot of good defensive work, but of course, there will be, of course, he's not the best in terms of the ball at his feet. And of course, like you said previously when you're speaking about Jovic, it's not something that you can train him to do now. He's almost 30, in my opinion. So I think that, you have to accept his style of play. There are not many players like Casemiro. Football is evolving, in my opinion. Most defensive midfielders needs to be so good with the ball at their feet. Like you said, Sergio Busquets, is a player, that Pep Guardiola trained in that, and that maybe define the position maybe for the coming years. And then you see guys like Joshua Kimmich playing in that position. I think that he's one of the defining players in that position in terms of how he plays. So it's not really one player doing the work. It's more like how can you incorporate like multiple players to do the defensive duties, like sharing the workload. At Madrid, it's mostly just Casemiro. However, previously we saw that Luka Modric doing a lot of the work, in my opinion. So Toni Kroos not doing much as Modric, but the workload was shared a bit, but that was because Zidane would normally deploy Casemiro up the field, in possession sometimes. Hence the defense would be a bit exposed if we lost the ball in a dangerous place. So hence Casemiro would be out of position. But now that Carlo's back, you're not seeing much in that. But however, like I said, Casemiro is maybe the last of his kind, in terms of how he plays. So of course, you can't replace the player when he eventually dips in form or moves on or retires. Of course, you can't just replace the guy. Of course, you can have complementary players like Camavinga and Fede Valverde, Antonio Blanco, who can play in a pivot, and share the workload like Kimmich and Goretzka does for Bayern. Like Jorginho and Kante does, or Jorginho and Kovacic, or Kovacic and Kante does for Chelsea. So of course, there are players who need to share the workload in terms of a better team, in my opinion. Because most of the great teams, they don't play with a classic destroyer in the midfield. So I think, in the future, this is maybe one of my predictions, is that maybe Casemiro, that he will drop in central defense, maybe 2 to 3 years down the line, and that opens the door for guys like Camavinga, Fede Valverde, Antonio Blanco, whoever is in our midfield, to play maybe in a pivot, but I don't think that we're going to sign a player like Casemiro. So I think in the future Casemiro can drop into defense. Not now, of course, because he still contributes so much to the team in midfield. So I just think that it's just the structure of the team. We can't just replace Casemiro. So Camavinga, Fede Valverde, Blanco can also play in the pivot. Because like he said, he cannot just replace the guy. Casemiro is defense to all of the other midfielders. And in terms of the players who is going to be affected, of course, maybe Blanco can be affected for minutes. But of course, we have to wait and see when Casemiro is out to see how Ancelotti lines up, especially when everyone is fit. I think it's too early to tell who are the players who are going to be affected. But personally, for me, I would say Ceballos, in my opinion, would be affected a lot. Of course, he was registered with the squad. Maybe he would have gotten a chance to stay, but I mean, Camavinga just maybe slams that door shut on him, in my opinion. And maybe Betis can come back for him on loan, so that Betis try their best to sign him on loan until on deadline day. So they might come back in for him in January. So I think Camavinga maybe shuts down his opportunities at Madrid, and maybe he can head into the exit door in January, because Betis will be coming back for him in January, as per many reports from Marca and multiple journalists. So personally, Blanco maybe would be still given a chance, but we have to wait until everyone is fit to see who is going to play when Casemiro isn't there.
Yeah, I mean, with Ceballos, I'm pretty positive that Betis will come back in for him. He is a Betis boy and he loved Betis, since he was very young. So we can always see that Ceballos is going to end up going to Betis, whether it's in January, whether it's next summer. But just to finish up on today's podcast, I want to quickly talk about Sergio Arribas. Now, my problem with, you can see with Sergio Arribas that he's probably the most talented player to come out of Castilla in quite a while. I see him as a more talented player than Blanco and Miguel. The way he just moves the ball and dribbles with it and finds a player or maybe shoots, it's like he plays like a 28-year-old. But he's what is he? He's 20, I think, and I think that type of player is invaluable. We don't have many of those players. But the problem is with that, you can just think about it, like in TV shows when someone finds something. Florentino Perez, all he views Blanco is just a walking dollar bill. That's all he can see. And that's what I see with Sergio Arribas. I see him going out on loan for a few times. He just goes somewhere, maybe La Liga, some smaller side in La Liga, and then eventually gets sold to someone like Inter Milan. And that's just the case nowadays. I really want to see Sergio Arribas, develop and become a starter for Real Madrid, because I do believe he can do that one day. I do believe he can become at least a squad player for Real Madrid. But I just don't think with Florentino and with his pathway being blocked by Camavinga, by Valverde, by Cruz, by Modric, I can't see him I can't see any other future than him just getting sold eventually. What do you think about Sergio Arribas?
Yeah, I mean, of course, in some ways, Sergio Arribas is a bit more attacking, in my opinion. And this year, of course, it's a bit difficult to incorporate him into the squad, because, of course, we had Bale coming back, Of course, we still got Asensio, Hazard is still there, So there are so many players in attacking positions, who can be ahead of him. Of course, in 2 years, if you ask me, of course, I would just love if we can just incorporate more young players, and maybe sell Hazard, sell Bale, sell Asensio if he doesn't perform. Because I think Asensio still has a lot to give, but we can't wait on him for too long, in my opinion. So I think Arribas is more of an attacking player in terms of the midfield, in my opinion. If you look at the goal he scored on yesterday, did you see that goal he scored on yesterday, the header?
No, I haven't seen it yet.
Basically, Miguel Gutierrez sent in a cross from the inside left, and he just basically ran into the space and just headed it home. He's he has so many attacking qualities, in my opinion. And to play instead of playing in midfield, he can play higher up the pitch, in my opinion. So there are too many players high up the park, in my opinion, at Madrid that's blocking his pathway. If you ask me that maybe next year in 2 years, I would love if Hazard is gone. Bale is gone, of course. You can see that Hazard and Bale are good players. Yeah, they're good players who can contribute now, But if you look into the future, and of course, if you're going to sign Mbappe, I think guys like Sergio Arribas and of course, Camavinga and these guys, they are the important guys for the future, and of course, Vinicius, Rodrigo. Arribas isn't like Vinicius or Rodrigo, so that's good. He has different qualities. Of course, there's Brahim Diaz, who can maybe come back in 2 years, So, there are still many options, he has to battle, hence, it's difficult, like you said, it's difficult for him to, break into the team. Maybe in the future, Madrid might sell him. I'm sure there will be a team that's coming for him because he's so talented. Teams will take note of that, and they know that Madrid have many attacking players, and they know that Madrid will sell if a good offer comes in. So yeah, I can see that he can be sold in the future. Of course, like I've always said, I would love our young players to be incorporated, but at Madrid, you know that if the money comes in, Madrid will sell. I do hope that it isn't a similar Oscar Rodriguez situation in terms of how he plays, because Oscar Rodriguez went to La Liga, he started so well, and when he made that step up to a bigger team, in Sevilla, from Leganes, he completely struggled. I don't think he scored a goal yet, in my opinion.
No, I don't think he has. He hasn't played much, I don't think.
But an entire year has passed, and without a goal, I hope that with Sergio Arribas, even if it's not at Madrid, he goes to a team where he can do so well that Madrid can buy him back in a buyback clause, etc., or maybe try and find a way to take him back, Because if you look at Oscar Rodriguez, there's no way we're going to take him back. Odegaard, that ship has sailed. There are not many former Castilla players, who are shining, in my opinion, except for maybe the older generation like Morata and Marcos Llorente. Yeah, yes, of course, I do apologize, but Hakimi, Reguilon, but like the attacking players, the attackers and the midfielders, of course, there are many, I know Hakimi and Reguilon are playing well, but they are both defenders, I'm talking about like the attacking guys at Castilla. We saw like
Jesse Rodriguez scored for Las Palmas over the weekend.
Jesse Rodriguez?
Yeah.
I can't remember the last time I heard about Jesse Rodriguez, but he was one of the talented Castilla players, but there are not many Castilla players, that's in terms of the attacking quality that's shining at the moment. Of course, I can mention Odegaard, but they are basically talking about the young players who grew up at Madrid. Odegaard is basically like a signing, in my opinion, similar to Camavinga, but different. But I really hope that Arribas, and all these Castilla attackers, can have an opportunity. Even Antonio Blanco as well in midfield. If not at Madrid, I do hope that they can find a place where they can shine, in my opinion. Because as you know, at Madrid, it doesn't matter how good you are. If there are players who can be signed that's better than you, Madrid are going to do it. It's unfortunate for the young players, but that's how football works. Because I don't think that, let's just say, next season, Arribas might be good. But do you think that we can win a league with him? It's difficult to say. And if Madrid can find a better attacker, they're going to pull the trigger and sign it. So, it's unfortunate, but that's how football works at Madrid.
Yeah, with we spoke about Spanish problems last week and how Luis Enrique doesn't pick Real Madrid players because they're not up to the standards that he's looking for. And I think Sergio Arribas is another one where we could just let him go and eventually he might make it to the Spain squad. Hopefully he does. Hopefully it's at Real Madrid. So, yeah, I think that should be the end of the podcast. Have you got anything else to say on Camavinga?
No, of course, I think, of course, we basically mentioned exactly how the Camavinga deal could affect the team. I think, he'd be a good addition to the squad. But we have to wait to see maybe when everyone is fit to see Carlo Ancelotti's plans for him. Of course, in my opinion, he was just signed to strengthen the squad because we couldn't sign Mbappe. And we needed an extra body to strengthen the squad because we can't depend on the same players. So it's a good signing, but we have to, I really hope in 2 weeks' time when we are speaking about this, it's because he's playing well. He has the opportunity when most of our players are fit.
Yeah, okay. So, do you want to plug yourself, plug your Instagram?
Yeah, of course, my Insta is RealMadridCommittee. We post daily updates, injuries, any transfers, any articles on how to improve the team in terms of transfers, in terms of tactics. You can definitely follow. There'll be a lot of interesting stuff I'll be posting. So, you can check me out at the Real Madrid Committee. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and give the YouTube video a like.
Yeah, okay, so his link will be in the description, as of always. And yeah, I think that's the end of the podcast. Thank you guys for listening, and I'll see you all later. Bye-bye.